Good morning and welcome back to the Prolific Author Podcast. I have kind of a special treat for you this morning. I am interviewing Andrea Pearson, who is a very successful author. In fact, she's one of the co-hosts of the Six Figure Author Podcast. If you have not listened to that before, I would highly recommend listening to it. All of the authors on there are very knowledgeable and very down to earth. And Andrea is one of them. So she is definitely someone that you should be getting to know professionally through her podcast, if nothing else. And she definitely has a lot of wisdom to dispense. She's been doing this for a long time, so she's had the ups and the downs and the, all kinds of writing experience in the indie space. She's a successful fantasy author, and she's recently moved to doing romance, and I'm really excited to see what she does with that. I think she's going to be wildly successful at it because she definitely knows what she's doing at this point. So in the interview, we are going to talk about everything from email writing to tropes to, how to deal with a series that may not be as successful as you want upon launch, just all kinds of things. And it's kind of interesting. It was really fun for me to interview her because I've known who she was for a long time. I don't think she knows me very well, but I actually learned email marketing from her originally years ago. We used to live in the same state. And so I saw her at a conference and listened to her talk about email marketing at a time when I only had 1 or 2 books out and had no idea how to email market. And then I went and bought her book about it. And, that's how I learned to do email sequences. So it was really fun for me to interview her on my podcast. And yeah, we're not going to do most of the other segments today. I would love to say that it's because I'm so excited just to get to Andrea's interview. And it's true, I really am, but it's also a really crazy busy month and I didn't actually prepare anything else. So because of that, we're just going to hop into the interview, but it's full of just these gems of wisdom, things that you really need to know and to do your best to emulate in your author career. Okay. So let's just let Andrea take it away from there. Welcome to the Prolific Author Podcast. Let's face it, readers read fiction to feel emotion and be transported and transformed. In this ongoing digital revolution, where online marketing is always in flux, the only way to create a sustainable author business and live off your royalties is to write transformational stories, market at every stage of the author journey, and cultivate a loyal audience of readers. Fortunately, there's never been more opportunity to make a living as a fiction author. Hi, I'm Liesl Hill, USA Today bestselling author and story clarity coach. When I'm not dictating my own stories about dragons, serial killers, and dystopian worlds, I help other authors write their own transformational fiction, position them as bestsellers, and market them like pros. Join me on the podcast where I give writing tips, marketing how-tos, story advice, and interviews with other authors who are in the trenches just like you and making it work. We are prolific authors. Okay, so we are here with Andrea Pearson, who is a very successful author. How are you today, Andrea?
I'm doing good. I'm a little cold. My office is 65 degrees right now.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is cold.
Got a
This is not the time of year
anymore
to good. Good. So why don't you start? I mean, I'm assuming a lot of people know who you are, but just in case, why don't we start with who you are and what you do and what you write?
Okay. My name is Andrea Pearson. I am an author. I wrote for the first 10 years of my author career fantasy, and I hit the USA Today list twice with 2 different books. Let's see what all, just a whole bunch of different stuff, all the fantasy I wrote for children all the way up through. My best-selling series have been my Colonia Chronicles, my Mosaic Chronicles, and my Coven Chronicles, which my assistant was like, stop adding chronicles to the end of everything. Like, sorry.
Well, it works though.
It does. And so they range between teenager through adult, those books do. So those are my best-selling series. This year I've switched to writing medical romance, sweet medical romance. And that's what I'm going to be focusing on for the next few years. I've decided that I love fantasy. It's my passion. It's not what I read though, which is kind of weird because I love reading, but when it comes to fantasy, I usually only read the best-selling books because when a fantasy book is done not super well, it really infuriates me. Whereas with romance, I can tolerate it a little bit better, and I don't know why. So I read more romance than I do anything else. But let's see, I'm also a co-host for the Six Figure Authors Podcast. I frequently get invited to teach at Dean Wesley Smith's Business Master class for authors. Can't even talk. That one. And it was canceled the last couple of years because of COVID, which was a sad thing. It was my favorite thing in the world to go to that conference. Let's see, what else is there? I don't know. I love
Yeah.
marketing. Marketing's like my favorite thing.
Oh, that's good. That's good, because most people who listen to my podcast and most of my students and everything, they like hate marketing, and I know that the main reason they do is because they don't know how to do it. You know, everybody who
Yeah.
feels like they can't market hates it. And so once you learn how to do it, then it's not so much a love-hate relationship. So that's good. Maybe we'll get into that. But I just wanted to, a couple of things you said. When you said you hit the USA Today list twice, did you do that on purpose, or like, was it a purposeful push for it, or did it just happen because you sold so many books?
It was a purposeful push because I wanted to see if I could.
Yeah,
Because I
yeah.
was like, let's see if I push really hard. I released into Kindle Unlimited, and so I would have been able to hit it, on other books, but I released those books wide just to see if I could hit the list. And then I've just released into Kindle Unlimited, just take advantage of pages read, because once you hit the list and then you realize it doesn't really do anything for you,
Yeah,
nothing
yeah.
long term. I was like, there's no point. So,
Yeah. We were kind of the same way. I hit it in. So did you hit it just like with one of your books then, or it was just all you? It wasn't like a box set or anything? Okay.
yeah.
I hit it when I was like in an anthology, and it was the same thing. We were just kind of pushing for it to kind of get that, behind our name. But yeah, you're right. We pretty much broke even on sales, and,
Yes.
doesn't do a whole
Well,
lot for you moving forward.
luckily the book that I hit it on was let's see, it was so my Mosaic Chronicles has 10 books in it, and I'd
Uh-huh.
already written almost all of those, and then I wrote a prequel novel that is a standalone story, but it ties into the series. And so I had 9 other books for people read after that, plus that
Okay.
series tied into my Coven Chronicles. So I did make, I more than broke even. So it was good that way, but I can't say that it benefited me more than a few months, and being able
Right.
to say USA Today bestselling author, in some circles it still matters, but most, readers, so many authors have hit the USA Today list now, the indie authors, because it's so much easier now than trying to get it traditionally published and then trying to
Hmm.
hit the list after that, and so it's a
Right.
lot, it's much better now. But I don't know that it carries as much weight. I know the New York Times, they're trying to make theirs carry weight, but most people are I just did the Romance Author Mastermind conference at the beginning of November, which was phenomenal.
Oh,
And
good.
one of the authors had 70,000 downloads on one of her books across different retailers, and she still didn't hit the New York Times list, and that was in a 1 week period. And I'm like, if that's not impressive enough, then what is?
Right,
So
right. Well, I've heard that the New York Times is just curated, so it
it
doesn't
is.
even go off of downloads, like,
Yep.
which is kind of stupid. I mean, it's like, what's the point of hitting that list then? You have to
You
really
have to
suck
be,
up to the right people to get on
yes,
it, So
you have to
yeah,
be in the in crowd, which I've never really been one of those. I'm like, no clicks for me.
yeah, yeah. Same here, same here. And then I don't even know if I have a question about this, but I thought it was funny that you said fantasy being done badly infuriates you, because I've had that happen a couple of times in the last year. I bought some book, and I won't say which one it is. I don't even actually remember the title off the top of my head, but I found it, and I think I was just looking through lists, and it had over 1,000 reviews on it, and they were all good. They were 4 and 5 star reviews. And so I bought it, and I could not even remotely finish that book. Like, it was so badly written. It was clunky. I had no idea what was going on. The characters were just not well fleshed out. And I was going, how did this book get 1,000 reviews? I don't understand. My books do not have that many reviews,
Yeah, and that's, there's lots of different readers for every book, and so
Right.
I think that especially as an author, we're pickier, than the
Yeah.
average reader is. A lot of the average readers won't notice the things that I notice now. Like, before I started writing, I was able to read like 75% of stuff, right?
Hmm.
Very, very rarely, maybe 95, because very rarely did I not finish a book. But now it's super hard. But some of the authors that are really successful, they pump out books really fast, and you can do that in romance and not have it be, because it's not as complicated. You're not setting up
Right.
worlds and magic systems and different creatures and multiple viewpoints. In some cases, romance is it's straightforward, which
Hmm.
it's really great when you're stressed, you know what you're going to get, which
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
maybe why I've been reading so much romance, is because I've been so stressed. but fantasy is not that way, and so it's harder to not, if you don't put as much thought into it, it's harder to pull something off that's going to satisfy as many readers,
Yeah.
let alone the writing side, the clunky
Right.
grammar and,
Yeah, yeah, totally. No, I agree with you. I always think that with my writing group, we're all authors and we're really nitpicky about things, but we also kind of know that readers are not quite as nitpicky as we are. So we can, if we can satisfy each other as writers, then we're golden with the readers,
Yes, it's true.
So can I ask you how, I mean, I probably shouldn't because you're not doing it anymore, but for the fantasy, how did you come up with your magic systems? I ask because I'm writing a fantasy right now, and that's like the number one thing I'm having a hard time nailing down is my magic system. So did you have any kind of like a process for the magic system or anything?
So my Kalenia Chronicles is the magic system. It's all started when I was probably 10 or 11 years old. I just built off of, we lived in this old house that it was old enough to have crystal doorknobs still, and
Wow.
just really, really pretty, this cute little pioneer farmhouse, and I found a skeleton key in the backyard and I was like, what if this key was a magical key? And I just kind of built on that. And then at the same time, I was brainstorming this kid who had a different heritage than most people, and he gets his magical powers from his non-human side, and I put those two worlds together. And so I just brainstormed like where, what powers did I want to have and how did he get them? And so I was like, I want to be able to have him be able to see people's emotions, so he can see somebody's anger, he can see their, if they're telling the truth, things like that. And I was like, well, how did he get that? Well, he got that from a race of people that their eyes are magical. It's the point of their powers is their eyes, and so he's able to see things that other people cannot see. And then my Mosaic Chronicles, and honestly, since my Mosaic Chronicles builds, I've got 3 series that are built in that same world. The magic system, it's just, I just reused it. But in the Mosaic Chronicles, it's based on their hair color. And so it's elemental based on hair color. So like blonde people control air, and dirty blonde people control water, brunettes and black control earth, and then redheads, of course, control fire. And then within that, I broke it down. I was like, I want it to be minute, like tiny granules of power. So one character, she can create fire, but she can't grow it and she can't stop it. So she can create a spark of fire. And so she's able to use her powers to like explode things, because all you need is a little spark for some stuff, And then another character, she controls sound and how sound moves. And so she can stop people from talking and things like that. And then another character, he works with dirt. I can't remember what his because I call them sub abilities. So you got the main ability, which is the event, and then sub ability goes down from there. That was so much fun. And the fact, elements, there's so many things. Like I could have had so many series based in that world, because I could have one character who is able to control like how a tree grows, but not how weeds grow, things like that. And so it was so much fun to delve into that. One character, she went the opposite of everybody else. And so her power was stopping like fire, things like that. And she gets a job working with the government. So like she works with the FBI and with police and things like that, to stop terrorists and stuff like that. So though it was fun. I would love to delve more into that again. Like now you're making me want to go back to writing fantasy. Like it's so much fun. I love
it is
brainstorming like magical relics and things like that. But the actual magical powers themselves, I think I'd probably stick to element, just because there's so many options in there. And then you could totally have a different origin story, completely change everything. And, I don't know. You've read Mistborn, have you?
Yes, but it's been a really long time.
But like that magic system was insanely different, how they eat metals and then they burn them. Like that was really creative. I'm not that kind of creative person. So my husband is the one I'm usually like, okay, so let's brainstorm. And he has all the ideas, so I'm like, okay, so how would this work? And he's like this.
That's a good idea.
We have co-written books. So
yeah. I have brothers that are really into fantasy. Maybe I should brainstorm with them. That's actually a good idea. Like, guys, I need help. Help me do this.
Yeah. And that's good, because if they read a lot of fantasy, then they can show you where plot holes are, problems in the magic system, which is a good thing, because, you want your systems to be sound and to be solid,
Right. Yeah. Maybe I'll do that. That's cool. Cool. Well, so how is all the romance writing going then that you've switched over to?
Well, I've got 2 novels in the last year done.
That's good.
Because
That's
I mean,
good.
this last year has been absolutely insane because we moved. Sorry, I forgot to mute my phone, so now it's silenced. My brother-in-law is texting me and my husband. No, I forgot. I mean, I forgot to mute my phone. I've just had a really crazy year because we moved. I sprained my ankle, had major reproductive reconstructive, yes, major reconstructive surgery on it, and I had pneumonia over the summer, and so I've just like I wrote 2 books, really, no, 3 books, because I wrote a reader magnet, so 3 books within a few months, and then my life just fell apart. And now that my surgery, it's been 2 months since surgery, so I'm able to do things now. I can function again. So I'm unpacking now because I wasn't able to do that after we moved, and just finding a place for everything. Like if I could show you my office, I try to chaotify this part, but right here is chaos. So anyway, so yeah, so I'm gonna start getting back into writing, hopefully the end of this week. No, this is Thanksgiving, next week. And
Right.
then I'm a fast writer. I type about 200 words a minute. And so I just get going, and I can get a novel done usually within a week or 2. And I'm trying to get my system down where I don't burn out. So I'm trying not to write as fast as I can, because, you don't want to push yourself so hard where then you can't do anything for like a month,
Right.
So I'm having to revisit all of my systems that I had before this move, because I also have a toddler now who is a very challenging. He's got a lot of allergies, and he's a very active, very, 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 very active kid. And he's also very demanding and throws a lot of fits. And so I'm having to keep the house from being destroyed by him. So yeah, changing all my systems and everything. So the romance has not, the romance is not done as well as I'd hoped it would, because I couldn't do anything with it. But that said, my romance, and I shared this on a 6-Figure Author podcast about a month ago. My romance in the last 4 or 5 months has done better than my last fantasy series in 2 years has done. My last fantasy series was a complete flop, which was really hard because I spent a lot of money on it, a lot of time, and it did not do well. And part of it, I totally miss a lot of the tropes that our readers are expecting right now. And the cover, I really struggled getting a good book cover on that in that series. Anyway, so yeah, my romance has done better with very little attention from me than a whole fantasy series has. So that's just 2 books and 1 reader magnet. So that's encouraging. It shows that I can actually do something with it. And once I actually focus more time and attention to it, I can resurrect that and get it doing well again. So yeah.
That's good. That's good. And it's interesting, isn't it, how you can kind of see, I've seen this recently with a different genre, that just some genres do better than others. And, because I have some that are they're fantasy, they're kind of, it was one of the first things I wrote, so it's not like really squarely in one genre. And I can get it to move if I run ads to it, but it doesn't move on its own. And then I have like crime fiction that I can throw something up and it'll just move. I don't even have to do anything, so it's always frustrating when the ones you want to move don't move.
Yeah. And fantasy readers, there's a lot more moving parts in fantasy, and there's a lot of tropes and things like that, but they tend to be a little pickier than romance. But also romance is easier, honestly, to write than fantasy is, which I don't think that offends romance readers, because I'm a romance author. Sorry, I'm a romance author, and I know romance is easier to write than fantasy. There's a lot of money in that genre.
Right. So can you talk a little bit about, I'm really interested in the way you said you misaligned the tropes. Can you talk about that a little bit and kind of what that looked like? Because there's a lot of people, especially because the people the authors I deal with are pretty new. Half the time they don't even know what a trope is, and so I have to explain it to them and tell them how to go and research tropes and things like that. So can you tell us like what you think you did wrong there and like kind of what it looked like?
Yeah, I'll actually tell you what I've done wrong with all my series. The first series, I wrote it originally about a 14-year-old boy. That puts it between middle grade and young adult. And that makes it really hard to find your target audience. And if you don't know who your target audience is, you can't market. And so when I rewrote that, the first 7 years that series was available, it did not do well at all. So I rewrote it, as a 16-year-old and turned it more into a young adult. And in like the last 3 years, it is way hands over fist outperformed the first 7 years. And then you'd think I would have learned from that, because the Mosaic Chronicles was about an 18-year-old, which puts it a little older than young adult because she's not in high school anymore. But because there's no sex in it, it can't go into new adult. And she's not old enough to be considered an adult, even though legally, I don't understand this. Legally, she's an adult, but adults don't want to read about an 18-year-old. They want to read about somebody who's in their late 20s, 30s, you know? And so that one, again, I made the same mistakes with that one. It was the wrong age. I'm not changing that one. That one's done really well. And so my next series that's also done pretty well was urban fantasy. And I hit all the tropes right with that one. And it's done very well. That one also hit, that was the other second book that hit the USA Today list. And so the tropes I did on that one is she's in her 30s. She's already established in her magic, which is something that you can't with YA, they discover magic, but in adult, they very rarely discover it. They already are doing it. Let's see what other tropes did I hit right. Okay, I'm going to tell you what I did wrong with my next series, so you can understand what I did right with this one. The next series is about a guy, and it's fantasy romance, more action adventure than romance. And most urban fantasy right now is written from the viewpoint of a woman, and especially if it's fantasy romance. And men, books that are about men don't have a lot of romance in them. And so if I don't know, like the biggest issue or biggest mistake I made with that was writing fantasy romance / urban fantasy from the viewpoint of a guy. And which is really sad, because I really like writing from the viewpoint of man, because, you know, I have 5 brothers, and it's fascinating to me how their brains think, and they can get away with being bossy. And, you know, it's a lot of fun to write viewpoints from men. I don't know. I'm a woman, so I get tired of being in my own head, you know? So
yeah.
Anyway, so I had a lot of fun writing that series, and the first book won 2 awards. And my reader said it was the best book they'd ever read of mine, but it didn't hit the market the way I wanted it to, because it had the romance undertones, and it was about a guy. And I considered rewriting it from the viewpoint of a girl. I even bought a cover to go with a pre-made book cover that was really phenomenal. But I'm like, you know what? Maybe someday when I have more time, I'll do that, when I'm not raising kids anymore, little kids anyway. But yeah, so the biggest issue I made with that one was the viewpoint of a guy. And the problem with this is, like, those kinds of trends and tropes, they fluctuate. So in 10 years or so, that series might just explode, because the pendulum will be swinging towards the other side. Because back in the, 80s and 90s, most books were written about from the male viewpoint, and now most books are written from the female viewpoint. And so it's like a pendulum that swings, and so I know that book series will eventually earn back the money I spent on it, and I think that it will eventually find a market and do really well. But right now it's not doing super well. So that's kind of a frustrating thing to hear, because you write something and you do all the tropes correctly, and in 10 years or 5 years, it won't be selling as well anymore. Or you write something right now and don't match those tropes to current, trends. And then in 5 or 10 years, it'll do better,
Right.
Let's see, what other mistakes did I make on that one? I think that was my biggest mistake. And then again, really struggling to find, like that series, it's about a guy who's being blackmailed into assassinating innocent people. And he's a demon hunter / assassin, but he usually goes after evil people for good people. And in this series, being, like I said, blackmailed into murdering innocent people. And so the series is naturally more angsty and more thought provoking than my other books are. And I think that also doesn't really work super well for the current market, depending on who you're targeting. Again, if it had been written from a viewpoint of a woman, I think that readers would have accepted a little bit better. I don't know. So it's kind of hard to tell. But another problem I had was the book covers. Like when I launched it, I've spent so much money on book covers, man. I made 3 different sets of book covers for all 6 of the series on my own, because I do my own book covers, and then I hated them all. So I hired a cover designer who did phenomenal work, but the covers she did for me sucked. They were really awful. And I had her do 4 book covers, and they cost $475 each.
Oh my
And then,
gosh.
yeah. And then I hired another cover designer who also does phenomenal work, and his book covers for me were awful. And I was like, what
Oh,
the heck is going on? And they progressively got worse the more I worked with him. And those ones, luckily, were only $210. And the ones that are on them now are ones I did myself again, but they're darker and more broody. There's not a lot of movement on them. And I'm keeping them there because I've put so many book covers on that series that I need to just stop paying attention to it and just move on, and I'll
yeah.
keep them there until I'm ready to tweak with fantasy again, work on my fantasy books again.
Hmm.
Hopefully that
Yeah.
answered the question.
Yeah, no, it really does. That's a lot. But I mean, I think it shows the amount of work that can sometimes have to go into a series. And, it's not just, there's a lot of people who think they can just slap their book together, throw it up there, and it's going to start selling. And it's a lot more work than that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So with that series that didn't do so well, did you run any ads to it? Like what kind of advertising did you do?
Everything.
Really? You did?
Yes, I did everything I usually do when I'm arranging for a new release. So I did Facebook ads. I did a long pre-order period, which I don't always do. Generally, pre-orders and me, I kind of like them, and then I kind of don't like them. And
Mm-hmm.
so for this one, I was like, I did a long pre-order period. I did a lot of Facebook ads. I did a lot of Amazon ads. I swapped with over 100 authors. It was a huge marketing push. And normally that would have been fine. But in this case, like the book launched with awful book covers, and I couldn't do anything about it because I was like, I couldn't switch them up so frequently that readers would pre-order and then see a totally different book, And so
Right.
it was just a frustrating experience. But I mean, my other books, when I did ads and launched, to Trope as much as I could, and did newsletter swaps, I mean, the series starters landed on the USA Today list. So I'm like, and this one, I was like, why didn't this one? Well, I already learned, it
Yeah.
didn't. Yeah.
Yeah. So talk to me about your email list. I don't know if you know this, but I actually learned email list building from you originally.
Oh, cool.
Years ago. I saw you at it was the League of Utah Writers conference. I don't even know how many years ago that was. I haven't even attended that in like 5 years. But anyway, I went to your presentation, and then I got your book Self-Published Strong, and I kind of started doing newsletters from you. So, talk to us about the newsletter and how important that is in your marketing efforts and for your books and everything.
I love that, like talking like right after I've made this huge career shift in writing, but I've also made a huge career shift in how I approach my newsletter lists. And so
Okay.
like so previous me always recommended, frequent emailing, which I still do recommend, but I also recommended being really personal, which I no longer recommend. And so so what ended up happening with my newsletter list, my readers on my newsletter list, I would get like 75 to 80% opens with thousands of readers on it. And I would have people email me and say, when they're on the freeway, they pull over to the side of the road to read my newsletters.
Oh,
And
wow.
I get emails like that after every single email I send out. People said they read my newsletters, like they read them. No matter what they were doing there at a funeral, they would read them if they came through. I mean, I would get emails like that every single week when I would email. And
Wow.
I'm like, yes, my newsletter rocks, but I couldn't get them to download my books. So what I discovered, I did a whole lot of research this last year and a half. If you're personal in your newsletters, you get really, really good opens. People really enjoy reading those newsletters. But if you're too personal, they become converted to your newsletter, and they kind of take your writing, your books for granted. And a lot of them would be like, yeah, I'll download them. I mean, they found me because they liked my books, but it wasn't as such a priority, even though every single email I sent out, I would focus on my books in some way. So the way I'm handling my newsletter now, I have cut ties with fantasy. One of the problems with me is I can't focus on more than one genre at a time because I do so much for that genre, weekly emails and all the ads and everything like that. And so I cut ties with fantasy 100%. I haven't emailed them probably just twice in the last year, which if you're trying to kill your email list, that's the way you do it. and that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to, once I start writing fantasy, then I will do things differently. So what I'm doing now with my list, I'm focusing more on the books. I'm giving personal updates. You want to give personal updates because then you become a human to them. And if they feel like they know you, they'll be more likely to support you. But it's a really fine line between too many personal updates and not enough personal updates. And so I think for authors, it's better to err on the side of not enough personal updates, while still, I mean, if you have a pet, that's something that everybody interacts with, a dog or a cat or something like that. You can do that and not share a whole ton about your life so that people feel like they need your every weekly email. Yeah. Like I had people email me and say they were going through withdrawals when I stopped emailing. And I was like, well, why did you do that with my books?
Right.
So the way I've got my system set up, and this is the way I did it with fantasy, and I still very strongly recommend this, is having an automated sequence. So, and a newsletter, a reader magnet. So a reader magnet is something you give them for free in exchange for them signing up for your list, for those who don't know. And so what I'll usually do for that is I'll give a free story or a free book or something like that that is not available anywhere else. And that part's really important because you'll have readers that will buy it rather than give you an email address. And so you have your reader magnet at the back of every book. They download it, or they sign up for your newsletter list, and then you have an email go out that gives them their free download and then also starts them on a series of automatic emails that will be sent over the course of about a month. And the first one comes like immediately to give them their reader magnet. And then the second one comes a couple days later to make sure they got that reader magnet. And then you set up a once a week thing after that. And those emails, the purpose of those emails is to slowly introduce yourself to readers and to deliver, like I said, that free book and to verify they received it, but also to get reviews on a book you're working on getting reviews for, or maybe have people join a street team or a review crew, or have them, follow you on Facebook or something like that. So it's basically all of the things you want readers to do and doing it on autopilot as an evergreen system so that you don't have to do it on your own regularly. And then you also know if they go through those emails, then they already know about, your Facebook group, things like that. So you don't have to email them regularly or, maybe just once a year and say, hey, have you joined my Facebook group yet? Things like that. And then after that, I still recommend you don't need to do anything. That's one thing us marketer people were like, you must be doing this. You don't need to do this, but you will have best results if you're emailing at least once in a 30-day period. The reason for that is newsletter providers and email providers, they pay attention to, it's like kind of like a recommendation system or like a respect system. I'm not sure what to call it, but if you're emailing at least once a month, then the email companies that you're emailing, like Gmail, Yahoo, etc., they recognize your email address and they trust it. If you email only every few months, then they don't recognize you, and your emails will more likely be sent to spam than otherwise. So if you're emailing at least once every 30 days, then your emails are more likely to be delivered. I recommend every other week to once a week, depending on how frequently you're writing and releasing. If you're only releasing a book every few months, then once a month is probably sufficient. If you're writing and most people are only doing 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 a year, they're not doing more than that. So I would say aim for at least once a month. And in those emails, if you're releasing every few months, let them know what you're working on. Don't hit too hard on that aspect. You don't want to get people too excited, because the problem with getting them really excited when there's nothing for them to do is A, they won't be able to do anything. They can't act on that. And B, when the product is available, they've already gotten over that excitement. And so don't hit too hard. You can just say, hey, I'm working on another book, but in the meantime, here's some books from author friends, or here's a picture of my pet dog, or just things like that. And then when the book does come out, then you hit it really hard. Like, you're like, my new book is available. You can either pre-order it now, or you can download it now. And then that's when you would tell them what it's about, like share like the description, share the book cover. You could share enthusiastic reader reviews, one lines. You don't want to get too far into those, just 1 or 2 sentences is enough. And then just really focus on getting them to download it in that email. Where was I going with all this? What was the question again?
just talking about the importance of a reader list for your marketing. That's all.
Reader
you're
list,
doing great. You're doing great.
Email your readers.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So do you find that you have a lot of your initial downloads and buys from your email list then?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. The people who are most likely to buy your books are going to be people who've purchased from you in the past. And the only way you can know who has purchased from you in the past or have control over that audience is by having your own newsletter list. And so, yes, a newsletter list is really, really important. And your most, the most downloads you'll get will be from that list, as long as you're, taking care of it and keeping up with it and all that.
Right. Good to know. So you're on your podcast, the other podcast, which I listen to, called Six Figure Authors. And so how did you, I know this is like a really loaded question, but how did you become like a six-figure author? Are there certain things that you feel an author needs to do in order to hit that level of sales?
Okay, so there are probably 3,000 roads to six-figure hooddom. The way it went for me, I never had a breakout bestseller or anything like that. I mean, I hit the USA Today list, but it was, like I said, it was after a big push on my part. And because I had such a large series, I had a lot of really, really great read through. For me, it was releasing consistently. I released between 3 and 4 books every single year without fail until this last year or 2 years since my toddler was born.
Darn those toddlers.
I have 3 kids. Yeah, I have 3 kids. And I became a more productive author when I had my first child. And then my second child just made me even more productive. I mean, I wrote and released 3 books before I had kids, and I have over 75 titles. So
wow,
kids made me more productive, but this toddler is going to break me. He's adorable. And he's like this tiny little kid who's not on the charts in any way. And anyway, so, let's see. Oh yeah. So I gradually built up to it basically. So what I did was I focused on writing the best book I could write, making sure it had the best book cover on it I could get, and the best editing I could have. And by best editing, I only ever work with one editor at a time. What I'll do is I write the book myself. I edit it myself. I send it to beta readers. I don't do this. This is what I did back in the day. I would send it to beta readers, then I'd go over their suggestions. Then I would send it to my editor. Then I would have proofreaders go over it, and then I'd publish, and so that was basically my system that got me to be a much better author. Now I can write a book. If I type it, it is almost ready for publication already because I've been doing this long enough, and writing is second nature to me. And I can usually my editor didn't even notice when I stopped sending my books to beta readers because my products were so clean by that point. And so just releasing a book that is well crafted, and not just the writing, but the story itself needs to be really good. And then gradually doing that every 3 to 4 times every single year. And then focusing on getting reviews, building my newsletter list, because once you have a newsletter list, you can control how many reviews you get, which is a phenomenal piece of power to possess. Like I can generally tell when I have a healthy newsletter list, I usually get between 50 and 100 reviews on between the first and second day it's been launched, which is phenomenal for marketing purposes. If you don't have a well-reviewed product, it's really hard to market. And so basically, that's just basically how I got up to 6 figures, was by focusing on that. I was also focusing mostly on launching wide. And so I had a lot of downloads on other retailers, and I was really good about making sure I got reviews on other retailers as well. And I worked with my merchandiser. I had a merchandiser on Smashwords who would get me in all these different promotions. And I was getting BookBub features regularly back then. And now that I've turned off fantasy, I put all my books in Kindle Unlimited, which I'm going to be putting them wide again next year. But I put all my books in Kindle Unlimited because I was like, my life is falling apart. My business is on the back burner 99%, for the last year and a half. I couldn't do anything. And so all of that has dropped away. Like I'm not focusing on that as much anymore, but now I'm switching gears to writing romance, and I'm going to be putting that same focus that I did in the past to writing romance. And so again, focusing on getting reviews, focusing on building my newsletter list, focusing on figuring out how to get Facebook ads and Amazon ads to work for me, which, by the way, if you're a new writer and you only have 1 or 2 books out or no books out, do not worry about Facebook and Amazon ads or BookBub ads. None of that. Do not worry about that. Right now, the most important thing for you to do is, everybody says this, write the next book, but focus on building your newsletter list, focus on getting reviews. And there are services where companies that you can pay the company to find reviewers for you. The reviewers do not get paid. The company does. The reviewers read for free. And then
what are the names of some of those companies?
Hold on. Reading Deals has a company, has a branch. I don't remember what they are. It's been like a year and a half since I used them. Booksprout is another one
Yeah, I know
that you
about
can.
Booksprout. Yeah.
Booksprout's pretty good. I think there's another one called Hidden Gems.
Right.
If you listen to Six Figure Authors podcast, like you, I think we've talked about them in the past. 20 Books of 50K group, I would recommend checking in there, using a search, the search function.
Yeah, they're probably in there somewhere, I would imagine.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And then after, like, reviews are inside of your control at that point. But then also, instead of doing Facebook ads and Amazon ads, pay companies who already know how to do that to do it for you. So I'm talking about companies like Reading Deals again, or ENT, Book Barbarian, Robin Reads, Free Booksy, things like that, because this is what they do, and they can get way more bang for your buck when you're first starting out, even in the first couple of years, than you could by trying to learn Facebook or Amazon ads. Facebook ads, I would say, if once you have $500 to $1,000 of money, you will not miss if you lose. Then start trying to learn Facebook ads, because you will lose that money as you learn ads.
Right.
I put probably $1,000 towards Facebook ads before I learned how to make them profitable for me. I've made way more than that since. But if I had done that before I was ready to financially, we would have been starving to death. $1,000 is a lot of money,
Yeah. 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 Well, I'm even actually not encouraging people to do Facebook ads right now because of the whole iOS update. And for new authors, it's just lot harder to make it profitable on the front end. And I feel like Facebook's going to come up with something eventually that'll be a little bit better, but I'm kind of waiting for them to tell me what that is. I don't want to teach new students that, because I just feel like they're going to lose so much money, and I don't want to, I don't want to be responsible for that. So a couple of questions on what you said. I just wanted to kind of unpack some of the things you said. You said that you get 50 to 100 reviews from your email list. So, like, can I ask you how many people you have on that list, just so that people get an idea of the percentage of reviews they can expect?
Yes, that's actually a really, really important question. So it's, so I have my review crew. That's what I call Andrea's review crew, right? It depends on how you run that team. So if you've got a team of people who review for you, you can run it one of three ways. The first way is really strict, where if they don't post a review, they get removed. And so if you have 100 people on that list, then you're going to get 100 reviewers, because if they don't review, they get removed from the list. Then the other extreme is, and do you know who Diane Capri is?
I know the name.
Okay. She writes Jack Reacher books. You know who Jack Reacher is? So she had permission. She writes about a detective who follows Jack Reacher around and is trying to put Jack Reacher in bar, So she runs her crew like that. She has 100 people on her crew, and she's very strict about how she runs it. Then the opposite side of the spectrum is Mark Dawson. Do you know who Mark Dawson is?
Yes. I'm a little more familiar with how he runs his, but go ahead and explain it, because other people might not be.
Yeah, so his team is open pretty much for anyone to join. And last time I talked to him, he had 2,000 people on it.
Wow.
So, and he gets way less reviews per person than Diane Capri does. I usually run my list in the middle, where I like them to post reviews, but I don't require it for every book, and I'm not super strict about it. And honestly, with a romance, I might not even run a review team, because it requires a lot of work. My fantasy side, I was having my assistant run it, but now that I'm not focusing on fantasy anymore, so with romance, I'm probably just going to be asking people to post reviews. But when I was running my fantasy list and I was releasing regularly, I had 250 people about on that list, and I would get between 40 and 100 reviews. It just depended on how their lives were going, and I wasn't super strict. I would remove people if they weren't reviewing, or if they requested to be removed. If they didn't review for a while, I didn't like to remove people who didn't participate all the time,
Yeah. Good to know. And so when it comes to, do you ever worry about getting negative reviews from your review team, or have you had that problem at all?
I have, and I remove them from my team.
Okay.
The reason they're on my team is because they like my books. And if they don't like my books, they don't get to be on my team. I'm not going to have them join I had one person, it was so aggravating. She posted a 1-star review. There's somebody taking a picture of my house. Anyway, sorry.
That's interesting in the middle of the day, huh?
Yeah, that's a really weird thing to look out your window and see. We're not selling our house. Anyway, she posted a negative review to get on my team. I let her on my team because she's like, I'm really looking forward to reading more. And then she posted more negative reviews. I was like,
Mm.
okay, so why did she post negative? Why would she want to read a book she hates? You know,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I did not understand that, and I would not have allowed her on the team because in the first place, but I did not see her review until later. So I
Mm.
don't read the reviews generally. Like if they want to get on my team, they give me a link to a review, and I would say 100% of people have sent me a link. It's been a link to the review they've posted. I haven't ever had anybody try to scam me. And so I stopped clicking on those links because I don't want to read those reviews because it's not good. It's not good for our brains and our heads. You know, they get too big if you're reading all the good press about your books, you know, but it's
Right,
also not
right.
good to read the negative reviews. So I didn't see that she posted a negative review until probably a few weeks later. And she actually emailed her review to me. And I was like, wow, she really wanted me to read it. She probably, I mean, the fact that I added her to the team, she probably didn't expect me to do that. So she was probably like, oh, she never read my review. Well, I better send it to her. Anyway, so I removed her from the team. I haven't talked to her since then. But yeah, if they don't enjoy my books, there's no reason for them to be on the team. And pretty much everybody who is usually leaves a 5-star review. I mean, I've had a couple of them leave 4-star reviews, but they're on my team because they love my books and they think they're worth 5 stars, you know?
Right, right.
And
Interesting.
that team is there for you, not for the readers. So you know, put people on it who like your books. Don't try to reach out into the if they're so. I mean, you'll get those reviews naturally. There's no reason to seek them out.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Um, so you also mentioned being really good about getting reviews on other retailers when you're wide. How did you go about getting them on other retailers?
Kobo, I don't know if they still do this, but Kobo would incentivize new accounts with a $5 credit. And so with my street team, I, for a while, required them to post reviews on 2 or more retailers. And sometimes, depending on the person, I would accept a Goodreads review and an Amazon review. But generally, I would say it has to be on one of the main retailers and not Goodreads is not included or BookBub. Now I'm not that strict anymore, obviously. But yeah, I would tell them you need to set up an account with iTunes or with Barnes and Noble or with Kobo and post your review on 2 different retailers. And I would encourage them to post reviews on Kobo because Kobo was frequently promoting me back then. And so I wanted to make sure that site was really healthy looking, you know? And so,
Right.
yeah, that's what I did.
Yeah, that's a super good idea. Good. I'll have to try that. That's one thing that I'm wide too, and I have hard time getting reviews on the other retailers. They don't come as naturally as Amazon.
No, they don't. Even people who buy on the other retailers will still post reviews on Amazon only, which I'm like, you bought the book from Kobo.
Yeah, no kidding. That's funny. All right. Well, we are coming up on 45 minutes here. So just to kind of throw a wild question at you, if you could take a plane ride with any author, living or dead, and talk to them the whole plane ride, who would it be and why?
Living or my oh wow. I would okay, so I'm gonna go with a serious and not serious answer, right? My
Okay.
grandpa was a published author. He had over 50 books and he passed away when I was 17
Oh,
before I
wow.
wanted to be a writer. And I would literally kill to have the opportunity to sit on a plane ride and talk to him like, what was it like? You know, how did you handle reviews and how did you handle this? And, you know, and how
Mhm.
stressful was it to write when you had kids? You know, I would kill to be able to talk to him. It makes me want to cry actually. Holy cow. You hit me with emotions. And then honestly, I would probably, oh man, my brain. I mean, I've met Brandon Sanderson several times. I've met Mole several times, and I'm just not. I mean, I could if I wanted to, because you know, I just not as interested. I'd probably go with J.K. Rowling. That was me going around and around and around and around my answer and being like, I really am serious. I love the Harry Potter. Sorry, the Harry Potter books. And I just finished a Harry Potter movie marathon, and it would be so much fun to just be like, where did you come up? Be like, what was your thought behind making Ronald Weasley and Hermione Granger end up together? Which I'm like, oh, I don't think that was a good. I think Ginny and Harry were horrible together too. Anyway, and then beyond her, I would probably pick one of my author friends, like Rachel Anderson. She writes romance. She's really fun to be around, and that would be a really fun plane ride. Or Jeanette Rawlinson. Do you know who Jeanette Rawlinson is?
Huh.
Oh my gosh, she some of the best romances, and she writes fantasy too for young adults, but her romances are they're so wonderful. So if you like funny books that are like have a little bit of emotion in them, like I almost always cry at the end, happy tears,
Uh-huh.
and cute romance love stories, look up her books. So for example, One Last Wish is really phenomenal, and then My Double Life, those are my two favorites of hers. But she's just a really funny, down-to-earth woman. It would be so much fun to sit next to her.
Yeah, I'll definitely look those up. I haven't read her. Well, good. Those are great answers. I kind of love asking that question to authors because it aggravates them because they can't come up with just one. So I kind of do it to torture the authors on my podcast.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many, but like, honestly, I've never been a fangirl type person. The only author I ever fangirled over, when I met, I was very disappointed. And I'm not going to say who it was. I was just very disappointed. I was like, so authors are real people. And that was before I started writing. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, and then since then I haven't ever really been like, oh, I'm here, because they're
Yeah.
normal people. And so, I don't JK Rowling just because that's on my brain right now. I just finished the Harry Potter movies. It's fun,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah, I think I would be like you too. People have asked me, well, who would you pick? And I could come up with 100 different people, but I would be more interested like in their creative process. And like, I would want to sit like by Edgar Allan Poe. I've come up with that before and just be like, just talk to me. I just want to know anything you want to say. I'm here to listen,
I was gonna say, like, from that era, H.P. Lovecraft, you know who he is?
Yeah.
But he would not be fun to sit next to because I'd be like, I don't really want to know what's going on in your brain.
Yeah, maybe learn that from a safe distance on the plane,
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for being here with us today. Do you have any kind of last minute advice for aspiring authors?
The first thing that pops in my mind is it's a marathon, not a sprint. Don't freak out that you're not writing as much as you would like to or as successful as you would like to be, but also recognize that if you don't do something, you will never do something. And so don't put off publishing because you're afraid you're going to flop. Don't put off marketing because you're afraid it's going to flop. Don't put off writing because you're too busy. Make it a priority, but then also don't freak out that you're not doing better than you are, because it takes years. And this is one of those careers where we see the success stories really easily. But what people usually forget is it takes like 20 years to become that success story, Right. And so just, you're in it for the long haul, focus on the marathon, not the sprint.
Good. That's really good advice. Well, tell everybody where they can find you and connect with you. We've talked about your podcast, which is Six Figure Authors, but where else can they hear from you?
So I spend most of my time on Facebook. I'm not on Facebook a whole ton though. So I get on Facebook like once every couple of weeks, except for the Six Figure Author Facebook group, which I'm the primary admin over. And I will get on Facebook, just add people to that and interact with people there. And then I'll totally ignore everything else about Facebook because my time, I'm like, it makes me a little panicky to think about being on Facebook sometimes. So if you find, reaching out to me there is fine. Email, I'm usually a few days behind on everything. So yeah, Six Figure Authors podcast and that Facebook group are where I'm most likely to be found. And then my email address is Andrea@selfpublishedstrong.com or AP@AndreaPearsonBooks.com. I also have courses on marketing. If anybody wants to look those up, I charge instead, like between $25, sometimes even $10. And I'm trying to remember, like I have one that's $100, but that one is a 2 hours that is really, really, it's called Advanced Newsletter Marketing. And that one is really packed full of really good stuff for running a successful newsletter. And so those are at selfpublishedstrongcourses.com. And I believe I've got a coupon code right now. Do you think your people would want that?
Yeah.
Okay,
I think that'd be great. Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to sign in really fast. A couple of the courses that I've got include like launching and relaunching books, because I've had to launch and relaunch. Like launching, I teach you how to launch a book successfully, and then I teach you how to relaunch. So if you feel like you flopped your first launch, which I've done several times, then you can relaunch. I teach you how to do that, and that one's also $50. Let's see, hold on. And I have one on automation sequences that teaches you how to actually set up the automation sequences. Which has, that's good, instead of subscribing to my list and then getting it after 5 months or something, Okay. So we're going to add a new coupon really fast. Do you mind?
No.
Percentage, 50% off for all of the courses. All right. So I'm going to set it up. Coupon code prolific. And I'm writing it down right now. I will go and put that in right now. So prolific, because they changed their system. So prolific, uppercase letters, selfpublishedstrongcourses.com. You can get them for 50% off if you use the coupon code prolific. Does that sound good?
Thank you so much for doing that.
So yeah. I try to do 50% off discounts because I understand it's having to learn how to market and having to do edits and book covers and stuff like that. It's not easy. So
right. Well, thanks. Yeah, I will definitely put that, and I'll make sure and link to the website and all of your places in the show notes of the podcast.
Okay. Awesome. Sounds good.
Great. Well, thank you again so much for being here, and good luck with everything with the toddler and the moving in and all of that.
Oh my goodness. As I told you, it's all chaos in front of me. Yeah. I'm like knocking things off my desk. Yeah. Well, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so that's the end of the interview. I hope that you found some value in that. Andrea definitely knows what she's doing, and she was very sweet to give us a 50% off on all of her courses moving forward. So the link for that is in the show notes. You can click on it if that's something you're interested in. And if you found some value in this or, in any of her courses, please share this podcast with your author friends. Always make sure that you are following the rules of any Facebook community you're in, but if you can share it in any Facebook group, on Instagram, anywhere that you think that you connect with authors, and, if you think that anything here is worth sharing, then please do that. Beyond that, I hope you are having a wonderful holiday season and that you have a wonderful week and a wonderful season of writing. I'll meet you back here, same time, same place next month. And remember, there is always a market for awesome. Bye, guys. Me again. Before you go, if you found value in this episode, I would love it if you could leave me a review. Reviews are the best way to show your appreciation and help others find this podcast. Be sure to screenshot it, share it on your favorite social media network, and tag me at LK Hill Books. Remember, the world needs your stories. Only you can change someone's heart with your fire-breathing dragons, your mind-blowing mysteries, your epic romances, and your intense thrillers. So join the revolution and be a prolific author.